Welcome to this episode of the BE RAIRE podcast, a podcast for busy and burnt out recruiters to generate leads, increase their revenue and automate their time. I'm your host, Jessica Kimber, and today we're going to be diving into one of the hottest topics that a lot of recruiters are talking about right now. Should you niche down or not? So this is going to be another solo podcast episode. I actually did my first one last week and I loved it so much, and I decided that I'm going to do a few solo podcast episodes a month. This is the second one that I'm going to record, and the goal of today's podcast is to help you understand the benefits of niching down, what that looks like, how you can get started right away, because I'm finding a lot of recruiters have a really, really difficult time at the moment and be so thinly spread across a ton of different roles, ton of different industries. They've got different pipelines in different areas, locations, and it's just getting a little bit messy. And with the market changing, as many of you would have experienced, the market's changed so much in the last 12 months that if you continue going down that path where it's already difficult, but you're not niching down and you're not an expert, you're going to have a really, really tough next 12 months. And I don't want that to happen for you. I want you to be able to make money in the easiest, most efficient way as possible. Stay tuned until the end if you want the exact action plan on how to do that. The first thing I wanted to talk about on this episode is how have recruiters typically managed their desk in the past? Now, I know a lot of bigger agencies, specifically, you would have a niche desk, you'd have an industry, a set of roles and a location. But a lot of smaller agencies, it was kind of a free-for-all. It was if you can get the role on, then you can work it. Being a generalist recruiter, and that's what I would call a generalist recruiter, it actually used to work to some extent. And fun fact, when I started my own recruitment agency, I was actually more of a generalist recruiter before I got into rec to rec. And what I found, and what a lot of my clients have found as well, because I work with a lot of small business owners, is having one role at one level in this location, and then a totally different role in another location, and then a different role in another, and another, and another, and having 5, 6, 7, 8, even 10, 15, 20 roles in some cases, completely different, in completely different locations, completely different talent pools, completely different set of hiring managers. People are burning out and it's becoming extremely hard to manage that. Back in the day, was it still possible to manage that? It was. It was more so speed to market, access. If you worked hard, if you put in the hours, you could make that work. And I ran a very successful desk on that model for many years. One of the biggest changes that I've noticed since COVID is a lot of recruiters or recruitment agencies have built their business and marketing strategy, including personal branding, around being niche, being an expert. And these recruiters or recruitment agencies are now able to have leverage in the market because they're seen as experts. Not only do they have fast access to talent, they have talent pools immediately, so they're a great choice to work with. Their marketing message is extremely easy because they are known in that space for that particular set of roles. And therefore, it's so much easier to generate inbound leads. Imagine if you walked into a store and on one shelf there was a snowboard, on another shelf there was a dog toy, and on the shelf in the corner, there was a wedding dress. You'd walk in and you'd be like, what the hell is going on? And from the company's perspective, how on earth would you even market a store? Like, imagine a website with those 3 items on. You'd be like, is this fake? Like, this is so random. Let's just say you absolutely love the wedding dress. You want to get the wedding dress. Would you pay full premium prices knowing they're not an expert? They don't have options. You don't know yet if it's going to be the right fit for you. Even if it's not, how will you tailor that dress? Are they experts? Do they have the capability? And then they drop a bomb and they say, oh, and by the way, this is a premium price dress. It's $20,000. You'd be like, oh, something seems a little bit dodgy here, right? And I think most people would have that perception. The problem is a lot of recruiters are running their desks like this. They've got an exec role over here, a blue collar temp over here. They've got an IT manager over here, an office support over here. What are you selling to people? Because if you don't know what you're selling to people, your audience aren't going to have a clue what you're selling to them. And we all know that one of the key rules in sales, and sales in any industry, definitely including recruitment, is create certainty in the market that you're the solution to their problem. So in order for you to position yourself in that way, you need to position the problem that they have and then the solution you provide again and again and again, and be visible and be memorable. Because if you don't, then no one's going to buy the wedding dress from your store, let alone pay premium prices. The way that you would get away with that is if you're cheaper than everyone else, they go, right, I'll give it a crack because you're 10%. But if you're going, yep, and it's retained and it's 20%, you've got absolutely no chance. Like, you really don't. Let's have a think about the other objections as well. We've got an internal recruitment team. If you're a generalist and you don't have access to niche skill sets quickly, why are you better than their internal team? Why are you better than a job ad? Why are you better than your competitors? If it's the PSA objection and you have to go through some kind of tender process, you've got agencies who are able and proven experience to supply a certain level of staff or certain niche. So why you? Right? And you have to think about it from that angle. You have to think about it, why me? Because if you don't have a solid answer to that why you, it's going to be so difficult to convert, because if you don't know why you, how can you expect to pitch it to them? So this is why I think niching down is so important, like unbelievably important, because you need to know, what is my skill set? What's the value that I add? What's the talent pools that I have access to quickly, including niche skill sets? How am I selling that to my audience? How am I visible and showcasing that to the world so I don't have to do everything one-on-one forever? And I can actually generate inbound leads through channels such as LinkedIn personal branding, email marketing, lead funnels, lead magnets, and so forth. Can you do it manually? Yeah. But with automation and AI changing the way that the industry is operating, you will get left behind and you won't be able to do it manually forever. Because there's systems out there, there's funnels out there which are able to nurture hundreds, if not thousands of leads at once. And I'm not talking about these spam bots that send a bunch of messages. I'm very against them, but that's a story for a different day. I'm talking about people who have a segmented audience. Let's just say my example, my segmented audience is recruiters. I nurture recruiters again and again. All of my value adds are aligned to recruiters. I have so many assets, resources, and value that sells into this group of people. Now, imagine if I targeted recruiters and tech sales people and construction business owners. What am I even posting about? How could I create a salary survey to tap into all these random markets? Like, you're just spreading yourself so thin. That's what I think. And that's more so like my opinions around niching. I think there's definitely a misconception in the industry about, if you recruit anything and everything, you'll make more money. Can you get some quick wins off the back of that? Yeah, absolutely. Like, you really can. However, long term, is that a strategy that you can scale, you can automate, you can actually plug in funnels? It's going to be really difficult unless you want 20 different funnels to 20 different audiences. And then it's a whole admin burden. And unless you've got a lot of staff or a lot of capital, it's going to be very difficult to manage. What I recommend is this. Have a think about how you want to niche down. So there's a lot of different ways that you can niche down. The first way is industry. So you could say construction industry, for example, any role within that you recruit. You can also niche down based on role type. So let's just say I recruit marketing managers and above. So white collar, permanent marketing managers, 6-figure salaries and above. I'll recruit a marketing manager in any industry. So it could be a marketing manager in a construction company, a marketing manager in an IT company, for example. So very much niche based on role type. By the way, I actually do recommend you do that. And I mean, if you've got a really solid industry, that also does very much work. But my preference is actually niching based on role type. Reason being is because if one market takes a tumble, and it will at some point, we all know what the economy's like and it's a little wild at the moment, you can then pivot to a different industry knowing because you recruit based on role type, you can just go into the market which is booming. An example of that is in Rec to Rec, I recruited recruiters. And in COVID, medical and healthcare and IT, actually, I was absolutely smashing it. I pretty much only really recruited those three because they were just insane. The markets were insane. But then I think it was 2022, Google let a lot of people go. They had like mass scale redundancies, thousands of people that got made redundant. And during that time, of course, the knock-on effect was IT recruiters weren't needed. There were so many candidates in the market. Job ads were getting 1,000 applications. Internal teams were managing that process. And a lot of agency recruiters got made redundant. I literally stopped recruiting within the IT sector and waited for it to come back again. And then I focused on different sectors. And at that point, it just happened to be construction, property, and real estate was booming. So I pivoted role type down that industry. So it works really, really well, especially if you recruit in more volatile markets. And by the way, you can have a niche within a niche. So you can literally pick like marketing manager roles just in construction industry, for example. What you need to decide is that too niche or is it too broad? Because you can make it work, but you also don't want to do yourself out if there's only like 100 companies in the location you recruit and that's tapped out. You might want to tag on another industry because otherwise your leads could dry up. So you want it to be niche enough that it's specific. You can become authoritative, you can become an expert and have clear messaging, but you want it to be broad enough that there's enough people in the niche as well. I was actually speaking to a recruiter that recruits in the fintech space here in Sydney. He actually broadened out to, I think it was New York, London. It was a lot of other key areas because fintech in Sydney was actually really small. He like mapped out everybody and kind of cycled through it again and again and realized he did need to broaden the niche. So just keep that in mind as well when you are thinking about niching. Now, the other few things you can niche on is location. I've actually got a lovely client in Ireland. She has a small business. She's a mum. She can't travel too far. So she actually recruits just in North, I think she calls it County North or North County Dublin. Forgot what way around it is. But she just recruits like a certain segment and she's like your local recruiter. That's her positioning and she's crushing it on LinkedIn. You can also niche down based on size of company as well. What I'm finding is a lot of small solo agency owners that I work with, they're having a lot of success with businesses which are too small to have an internal team, but big enough that they're scaling. So the sweet spot around 50 to 200 staff works really well if you're a boutique or small agency owner or employee. But if you work at really large global companies and you've got teams that can help with bids and tenders and so forth, you might be better off going for all the big PSAs, like big banks, for example. It's all about understanding, well, what is the opportunity within this space and what's my skill set and what can I leverage? That's more of a high level overview of how you can niche. Now, let's actually dive into, you want to niche down. Where do you start? What does that look like for you? The first thing I recommend you do is actually probably not what you expect me to say, but the first thing that I would like for you to do is think about what type of recruiter you are. Not all desks are created equally. So somebody who's like an exec level retained recruiter versus a blue collar labor hire temp recruiter, it's a very different experience. It's a very different role every single day. You really want to be picking a market which suits you. The other thing I'll note here is if you hate the thought of cold BD calls all day, every day, pick a talent short market because you can get away with just headhunting and working the candidate, reverse marketing, building a brand for visibility. You've got a need, you've got the supply and the demand. You can actually make fees very, very quickly off the back of that. In fact, I've actually got a client, he's in the allied health space. He started a new role recently. He made 150 grand in his first month. He had visibility on LinkedIn with the right people, reverse marketed, made 150 grand in a very short period of time. He's in a talent short market. If you don't enjoy so much the more consultative conversations where it takes 3 to 6 months to make a placement, and some markets do, and you prefer the more high volume, we'll call it transactional. I think there's a bit of bad stigma around that word. I don't mind the word transactional. What I mean is that type of volume recruitment where you can run assessment centers and fill 10, 15, 20 jobs in a day. That also exists. Call center recruitment, office support recruitment, for example. You can get crazy temp billings. In fact, the way I've been able to generate the majority of my revenue is those really high volume, high paced desks combined with niche perm roles as well to boost my billing. So I've always operated very fast-paced temp desks and then try to do, 1, 2, 3, 4 placements a month on the perm side of things, high-level retained placements to get my billings up to 6 figures a month. If you can also do both, and actually that's another thing you can niche down on, temp or perm or both. I actually recommend both if you've got the means to do it. I know it's different if you're employed, so you might have a counterpart. It is good opportunity and you can get some temp to perms there as well. So have a think about the markets that you really enjoy recruiting in. The goal really of what I'm saying is to think about what style of recruiter am I, and therefore what niche should I pick off the back of that. If you're struggling with this, I actually do have the BE RAIRE Online Academy. It's a monthly subscription. You can join anytime. You can leave anytime as well if you get what you need out of the group. I'll leave a link below. This is actually my online academy, which is end-to-end sales training and end-to-end personal branding training. And part of the modules, one of the lessons is how to find your niche. And it's literally a workshop where I ask you questions, you write down what's true for you, you analyze, you unpack your niche, and by the end of it, you'll have a niche. And then the rest of the training is, right, you've got a niche. Now, how do you generate leads within that niche? Because by the way, lead generation is also not one size fits all. There's actually over 30 ways that you can generate leads. You'd never use them all. You'd run out of time, but you'd pick the top 3 to 5 in your market based on how your market likes to buy and your style of recruitment. If you want to check that out, like I said, I will leave a link in the description. What I'll also note is within this online academy, you also get weekly group training as well. So every single week we get together for an hour, different theme, different topic every week. Some weeks we'll pick, for example, cold calling, and then we run through best practices. I review where you're up to on the training, give you feedback, help you overcome roadblocks and so forth. But continuing on from what I was saying, you really want to pick a niche which suits you. You don't necessarily need to have knowledge or experience in the niche, if I'm totally honest, because you can actually learn a niche from research and speaking to candidates, although it does help when it comes to selling your services, because if you understand your niche and you can say, I've got X amount of years experience, or I have been my target audience. For example, I've been a marketing manager in the past and now I recruit marketing managers. It's great for the credibility, but not essential. So that's what I would recommend when it comes to niching. The next thing I would like you to think about is, once you've got a niche in mind, have a think about the opportunities of that niche. So let's just say you've assessed you want to go down the path of IT recruitment. You enjoy that niche, you like technical roles, that's what you want to do. Look at the opportunities within IT, because it might be that back in COVID times or for the last 5 years, you've been very successful in software engineering. But it might be that in 2025, these type of roles are typically getting offshored. So the opportunity is actually in an AI consultant or a cybersecurity consultant, for example. You want to also be picking role types where you know there's a massive need and it's not a role that's potentially going to dry up anytime soon. I mean, can you still work those roles if you get them? Absolutely. Knock yourself out. But if you think about building a long-term stable desk, you want to build a desk that follows the opportunity that's happening in the world. This is where you can also sell that authority into clients, saying, look, I know that AI consultants are going to be the most number one in demand role in the next 12 months. Now, I'm a specialist in that, etc., etc. Go into your sales. That's going to really pique their interest, because if you know your market, you'll know that that's the agenda of a lot of IT businesses that you're targeting, so you're speaking their language. Then when we cross over into personal branding, can you imagine if you have a message online and you have visibility around how AI consultants are transforming businesses, how to scale your team when hiring an AI consultant, what companies need to know when scaling their AI division. Can you see how I've literally just picked something I know my target audience wants? There's a need, there's demand for this. I'm then able to sell my services as the expert in terms of the way that the industry is going. And then I'm able to be visible online and talk about a topic which I know is going to pique curiosity with my target audience. That is so much easier to generate leads than if you recruit one AI consultant, office support over here, you've got an accountant over here. Can you see what I mean about it dilutes the message? Like, it's so hard to convert. Like, I can't work with people that don't want to niche down. And it's actually something that I have in part of my qualification process of training, because I'm like, you may not be niche now, but are you open to it? Because if you want to be a generalist recruiter, I'm not the trainer for you, because I can't teach you to spread a marketing message to 100 different people. Like, it's just too much and it dilutes your message, and it's a short-term strategy. And I like working with people that have long-term visions and want to build something sustainable for the future. That's something for me that's an absolute non-negotiable, and I really, really, really recommend. This may be the first time you're hearing about this and you're like, oh, is it true? Is it not? And that's okay. But what I'm trying to say is do your research, because I promise you it's so worth niching down. It will transform everything for you. Not to mention as well, and this part's a complete side note, but when you then go in and say, oh yeah, and by the way, it's 22%, but you're the only person that can do it. You're the expert, you've got the positioning, you've got the target audience, you've got the network, you've got the access, you've got the know-how of these positions. An old mate up the road is cheaper than you, but they take 3 weeks to deliver. They don't have a clue what they're talking about. They send dud CVs. They've got no online presence. Do you really think the couple of % difference makes sense, it really doesn't. And then you can pitch retainers as well, which I always try and encourage people to go down the retainer path. Of course, that's not an overnight solution, but totally recommend you edge towards that, at least exclusivity anyway. That's a conversation for another day. If you do want me to create a video about retainers, by the way, let me know in the comments. More than happy to do that. It is something that comes up a fair bit. That's what I recommend when it comes to looking at opportunities. Now, you also want to be looking at the threat within the industry you recruit. Is your industry that's going to last? Is it going to be around in the next 5 years? Because you don't want to spend the next 2-3 years pipelining and building a brand, and then the types of roles you recruit are actually going to disappear when it comes to AI and automation and all the amazing things that are happening in the world at the moment. Have a think about the threats as well. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the commercial feasibility of the desk. Again, not all desks are created equally. Some industries are more likely to pay fees than other industries, and I've actually heard that some industries such as construction, real estate, they're notorious for really low fees, like 10-12% fees, and not paying their bills on time. So that's also a consideration, because what you'll also find is some markets, they're used to paying accountants, public practice, let's call it. They're used to paying 20-22%. You can just find the top 5 candidates, reverse market them, set them all up 5 interviews each, bish, bash, bosh, you've got a 6-figure month there. Now, I know I probably made that sound a little bit easier than what it is in reality. Of course, all desks are hard work. It's recruitment. It's always going to be a bit hard work. However, very, very different experience recruiting a public practice accountant at 20-22% compared to someone in construction at 10-12%, not paying their bills on time. It's very, very difficult to manage. That's also a consideration as well. I've actually worked with so many clients in the past that have started their own business, and of course cash flow is just critical when you start your own business. And they've actually said, for example, one client, he was in the construction industry, but he didn't want to do that for his own business because he was actually so worried that the clients wouldn't pay the bills. And because it's his money and his cash flow, that could be the difference between his business surviving and not surviving. So also keep that in mind. And even if you're employed, your commissions depend on invoices paid. You just don't want to be doing work for free. Another reason why I love retainers is having a look and thinking, is this market commercial? Also, is it more contingent, exclusive, or retained? You want to be working in markets that are more exclusive or retained if possible. Contingent if it's fast paced, so you can make a placement within a week. I don't mind that. I'm actually fairly open to contingent in fast paced environments. But if it's a role that's going to take you 3 to 6 months contingent, absolutely not. Has to be retained. So also you need to figure that out. And if you're someone that is listening to this and you're saying, well, I'd love to do retained, and actually I think there's a market for it, however, I don't know where to start, the online BE RAIRE Academy that I spoke about also has a whole section on selling and pitching retainers. So be sure to check that out, because by the end of that workshop, you literally be 100% confident with your pitch and how you're going to sell retainers to businesses. That's all for this episode. I hope this was valuable or at least insightful. If you do have any questions, then be sure to comment them below. Like I mentioned, I'll leave a link for the BE RAIRE Academy for you to be able to check that out. If you are stuck between knowing what niche to take, how to generate leads, what that looks like, the BE RAIRE Online Academy is really going to help you get there. So check that out, and I will see you in the next episode.